I stand up tonight to talk about an issue of debt, and rural debt in particular, and drought, the two Ds if you like. When you have debt and drought, debt plus drought, you often end up with desperation too, so you end up with three Ds. And in the parliamentary break, I spent a bit of time driving from Townsville to Mount Isa. It's very dry in those areas. They've gone through two very dry seasons and a lot of drought. And after those two very hard years, plus a few other hard years, which I'll talk about later, there's a lot of debt in those rural industries, and they're struggling under that debt. It becomes a bit like a chain around the ankle, and it's hard now to have the flexibility to keep going and get back on your feet. I went to five of the towns along that road, to Hewenden, to Charters Towers, to Richmond, to Julia Creek, to Cloncurry. Ended up in Mount Isa. In Charters Towers, I was meant to go to the sales, to the cattle sales that were on that day, but there was no sales. It was cancelled. It was 9 weeks in a row they've had no sales at the Charters Towers sale yards. One of the busiest sale yards in the north, and no sales for 9 weeks. That's in a context where there are record kills in our abattoirs at the moment. There's a lot of cattle going through the system, but they're not going through the sale yards. They're not going through the sale yards because people don't have the confidence to send their cattle to yards where they're up for auction, where they're potentially at the risk of getting a low price, and they've got no option once they've sent them there to take them home. They've got no money to do that. So they're putting them straight through the meatworks, putting them through the grid, as it's called, and that leads people in a pretty desperate situation because not many meatworks in the north. If you draw a line from Townsville to Perth, there's no meatworks in the country north of that. So when they've got to go to the meatworks and not the sale yards, the meat processors have a pretty good position in the marketplace, and prices, as many of you would know, are down to record lows in our beef markets, down to prices that we haven't seen for 20 or 30 years. And that's making it tough for people. Those prices, those low prices, come on the back of a roller coaster ride in land values for our beef sector, particularly in North Queensland. And I want to put on record the Senate, many people probably don't realise that 10 years ago rural land had been flatlining for a number of decades, and then in the space of 5 years land values went up by about 5 times in North Queensland. They went up by about 400%, 5 times increase. And then we had the GFC, and prices have since then fallen by 40%. Now, to put that in context, in the cities most affected in the US by the subprime crisis, they had increases of 2 to 3 times. So Phoenix, Las Vegas, those sort of cities, their prices, their residential housing went up 2 to 3 times. Not 5, 2 to 3. And since their crisis, prices in those cities have fallen by about 30%. So in rural North Queensland, in the pastoral industry and the grazing industry, they've had a bigger increase and a bigger decrease than any of the cities in America as a result of their subprime crisis. And we've all seen what effect that had in America, those price changes. And I would reckon that if we had similar price changes on the ASX and the Australian Stock Exchange, or in the suburbs of our cities, there would be absolute carnage. People would be underwater. They'd have a lot of difficulty in getting back on their feet. But that is what's happened in North Queensland over the last 10 years. And there's no surprise then that people are struggling. And what is the surprise is that we still have a beef industry in this country after all of that. And it shows the resilience and efficiency of our industry that they still survive. They've been through a financial disaster. They've had some natural disasters with the drought, but also they had floods in 2009 and 10. They had fires as well in many areas. Then, of course, we had another natural disaster. We had Tropical Cyclone Ludwig, when he decided to ban the live exports in the industry. Overnight, made an overnight decision to ban exports to one of their biggest markets. It took 500,000 head out of the industry, and that further depressed prices. So a lot of the position that people are in is not a result of their own business management. It's not a result of just general market conditions. It's a result of a government decision that was made in 2011 that devastated the industry and is still devastating the industry. Back then, before the live export ban, cattle prices in the eastern markets up and down our coast were about $4 a kilo carcass weight, $4 per kilo. Last year, they dropped to $3.15 per kilo. A lot of because of the live export ban. So in the last 5 years, we've had a 40% reduction in land values, a 20% reduction in prices, and a shutdown of one of our major markets for our beef industry. There is no wonder that people are in a desperate situation. That's all confirmed by lots of data that's out there. In the last couple of months, the MLA, the Meat and Livestock Australia, have put out a situation report on the beef industry. They had three major findings. They found that the majority of businesses are not sustainable in the north. They're not making enough money right now. They found that the financial performance has been dropping off, principally because farms are having to take on more debt and pay more interest, and that farms are only making about 1% return on their assets at the moment. Their debt, ABARES data confirms that over the last 10 years, average debt for the northern beef industry has increased from $280,000 to $650,000 per farm. And the biggest component of that increase in debt, of that $400,000 increase in average farm debt, has been to finance working capital. It hasn't been to finance investments in more fences or more waters or more productivity. It's all been made just to keep the business running, to keep buying breeders, to keep the business running from year to year. And that's of great concern because if people now are at their limits of their working capital finance, if they can't go back to the market to get more finance, they're going to be in a very difficult position in the next couple of years because most people, because they've been drought affected, have destocked. There's not a lot of cattle in the region at the moment. But I'm of the view that prices are going to go up, and they're going to go up big time. And we want people to restock, but they're going to have to get finance to do that because to buy in a breeder, to buy in a heifer, they're going to have 2 years before they get a check. They're going to have a calf and fatten that calf up. They need finance in the meantime to do that. Now, I want to give credit tonight to the Gulf Cattlemen's Association, who are a newly formed organisation in our north. They've been at the forefront of highlighting these issues for people in their region. They've just completed a survey of 600 graziers in their area in the Gulf and Cape York. They got a 26% response rate, 160 graziers filled out the form. It shows and confirms the concerning situation with more than 50% of graziers not believing they have a future or a viable industry. And all of this, I think, points to the fact that there is a role here that we need to help people out. People are in a tough situation, and I believe we're a country that helps people out when they're doing it tough. They're doing it tough, as I said before, in large part because of government decisions, because of decisions made in this place, on this hill in Canberra. And we should reflect on that when we consider what we should do to help these people out, given whatever side it was. I wasn't in this place when those decisions were made, but I do think it's incumbent on us to help people who have been affected by a bad decision in this place. We need to get the banks together with the industry. We need to get the government at that table as well to try and facilitate an outcome here, because people are in a too high debt situation. We need them to come down to a more moderate situation. We need the banks to be part of that process. The government has a role too to help facilitate that, and we need to have that discussion to be had, because we need to give people a future. We need to give people some hope, and we have an obligation to help people out who are in need. I also think that there are longer-term issues here. There has been some rain in the past week in Queensland, not in all of these areas in the Gulf, but some areas of Queensland had some good rain, and that is welcome, but the rain is not going to wash away the debt. The debt is an issue, in my view, that predates the drought as a result of live cattle, as a result of the change in world economic conditions, and it's an issue that's going to outlast the drought as well. So I and others have called on this place in the Senate to consider putting in an inquiry into rural debt. We haven't had an inquiry into rural debt for some time. These issues, I recognise, go beyond just the beef industry and beyond just North Queensland. There are many other agricultural industries who have also suffered under or are suffering under high debt loads, but we have very limited information about their situation. We've got some more detailed information on the north in recent months. I do think it's something that the Senate could turn its mind to, and it's also something as a vehicle to elevate this issue, because I do think it's our job when we're not in this place, spend some time on the ground, see what people are feeling and thinking, and bring it back to this place and try and raise and elevate the issue on their behalf and and that's what I've found in my 5-week parliamentary break.